What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo with Mike Golick Jr. That is me. With me, as always, taking casual Friday to Wednesdays, Hawaiian shirt Brandon Newman. What's going on, Brandon?
Nothing much, Mike. Ready to talk about football and whatever the hell you want to talk about.
All right, I'm sensing a little sass. Is there something you want to get off your chest?
Oh, admittedly, there's a little sass. I'm not sure why there was a little sass coming your way. It's not towards you. It's towards the ether. It's towards everyone, Mike. I don't know. Let's restart it. Matter of fact, yeah.
Go ahead. You know what? No.
No. We're not restarting, actually. This podcast has started. But go ahead. Give it a new one, and I'm going to give you a little bit of fresher energy, okay?
All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo with Mike Golick Jr. That is me. With me, as always, trying to fake it till he makes it, Brandon Jarrell Newman. Brandon, what's going on?
Mike, I'm having such a good day. It's been such a great week thus far. I'm so happy to be here with you. What's on your mind today?
Well, Brandon, there's a lot on my mind today. We are at Wednesday of the NFL Week 1, and don't think your sass has been forgotten, all right? Just because I am currently juggling not only the Wednesday of NFL Week 1, where we have a lot we want to get to. Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens is going to join the show here as we check in with him leading into Week 1 of this season. A lot at stake for the upcoming Ravens season, some new faces around there, and pressing questions about the most important mascot in sports. But Brandon, before we get to any of that, because I got that on one side, I've seen everybody in the NFL content space doing some sort of power rankings in the last couple of days here, whether it is quarterback rankings, most interesting offenses or defenses, bold claims heading into the year, GMs and people around the league making their picks. So for us, we're going to dumb this down to our level and do the all-narrative team going into the season. Yes. We're going to pick a roster of the best narratives from this offseason that we've got hanging in the balance going into the 2022 NFL regular season. I am also in the midst of one of my fantasy drafts, which, Brandon, for me, is really like one of the hallmarks of knowing it's football season, when I've got to get hit up by multiple people because I've forgotten which league I paid my dues for already on the start of the season, right. Get reminded that, I do have a draft at this time, and that was the case for the draft that I'm in during the recording of this podcast. And so it's going to be the max effort I give in all of those leagues, whether it's the Survivor leagues, I've got a Dynasty league, and I've got a normal fantasy league I'm playing in, and they will all get my max effort Week 1. And then after that, it will be the never-ending battle for me to remember to set my rosters on the way back from wherever I'm traveling to over the weekend.
It's hard, Mike. It's hard to remember. That's why I recognize that I'm starting slow. I'm getting back into fantasy football, and I'm a big auto draft guy, and then also just make the trades when you need them. Because you know what, nothing's gonna build my team better than the algorithm is. You know what I mean? They've been reading all the articles that I haven't. But Mike, the question that on everyone's mind is, what is your fantasy football team name?
So, because we were early adopters of the Detroit Lions, like everyone else from the Hard Knocks season, as America's team this year, I am one ass and three toes in honor of the opening statement from the Lions head coach Dan Campbell.
That answers my second question, was if you kind of lean towards the topical nature or if you just have your staple. Because my nerdy ass, I'm a little bit of a tech savvy dude, but I love my football. My general name for my teams is Control-Alt-Delete.
That's a good one, though.
Thank you.
Oh, I wasn't prepared to like that as much as I did. By the way, if you like Brandon's team name for his fantasy team, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review GoJo wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and a review as always. Make sure you head over to the DraftKings YouTube channel. Check out the GoJo with Mike Golick Jr. playlist on there, and you can see Brandon's Hawaiian shirt and his sassy attitude today that he's brought into the mix. And Brandon, I think I know why you're sassy before we start drafting our all narrative team.
Okay.
It's because you tried to kill Serena Williams' dad yesterday. because and you can always tweet us at GoJo Show on Twitter.
Okay, yeah. So right now, we're listen. This is Skeleton Crew. We're a couple episodes in. This is episode 88, and it's just Mike and I, and we don't have a stat boy yet. So our stat boy are the people, and maybe they misconstrued me saying that Serena's father, King Richard, was watching from above as saying that he was deceased and no longer with us. I didn't say that. I may have insinuated that, but I didn't say that, Mike. I just want to put it out there that I did. Watching from above just means
Sean
everyone
Crump
was...
tweeted at us and said Serena's dad wasn't watching from above. Dude's alive, Now he is, and on a serious note, he is not there. I believe he had a stroke a few years ago. Still dealing with some neurological problems from that. We obviously wish him well. But Brandon, I also want to remind you that you are not alone, because on the Yes Network, which is the flagship station for the New York Yankees, they offered a somber remembrance of New York media member Bob Traynor on Sunday. Michael Kay and the broadcast crew were eulogizing Traynor during Sunday's Yankees-Rays broadcast. And when that started to hit the internet, WFAN and CBS Sports Radio reporter Mike Mancuso posted on Twitter that he spoke with Traynor on Monday. He said, "Friends, something didn't feel right about the various reports of Bob's passing, so I reached out, and Bob called me this morning. Happy to say he's alive and doing well. Bob is thankful for all the kind words." And Brandon, that's probably, while again, it's a good reminder for all of us, and this is usually a fine over on our friends in the Dan Le Batard Show, to make sure you check before you assume that someone is no longer with us. I also saw Chris Long had a game going on the Greenlight Pod where he tried to just guess if random older celebrities were still alive. But at the same time, I will say, this is the best possible case scenario for this, right? Where he is still very much alive, and we're happy that he's with us. And he got to hear a bunch of nice things said about him from people that thought he was gone. It has always seemed like such a shame that usually these flowers only come out when someone's actually passed. And so he got the flowers while he could still smell them. Now, the next time he sees those people, you're due for a really awkward hug or something like that, because you've internalized all these nice things. But all's well that ends well, I guess.
Hey, ends and starts well. False start on the death of Mr. Senior Bob. And, back in the day, I'm over this now, Mike, but I used to really obsess over being able to see who came to my funeral. Not necessarily the words that were said, but the people that actually pulled up, put their hand on the casket, gave a little, too bad he's not here with us anymore. And I don't have that anymore, but I do love that the internet can provide that by these people just thinking like, oh, I haven't heard from this person in a while. He must be no longer with us.
It's what Google's for, man, because the last thing you want to do is pop that up. And I'm sure Michael Kay apologized after and felt badly about it, because Lord knows if someone's family is watching and sees that news, that'd be a pretty jarring way to find out that the person you love is not alive and then discovering they are alive. We just watched a whole documentary on how that can be a pretty jarring experience for someone who's in the middle of a college football season. So,
speaking of fantasy football team names,
I know. Hopefully a lot of people have retired those, by the way, as everyone's had this groundswell of realizing, hey, maybe getting these jokes off at no cost wasn't necessarily the coolest thing on earth. That hopefully people will deviate away from Lene Kakua team names here. That would probably be among the healthier responses and the simplest things that we could do coming off that documentary experience where everyone recognized they went way too hard. I don't say we, because it's not like I was out here cracking jokes about that. I lived through that. So, story for another day. Not to get sidetracked by all that. But just a reminder, always good to do your homework. All right, Brandon. We have the 2022 GoJo with Mike Golick Jr., and Brandon Newman. 2022, now I've said that twice. NFL narrative draft that we are going to do. So basically, we wanted to take a look at an entire NFL roster made up of the most interesting narratives heading into the season at each position. And we generalized it to an extent. We're not going to do the most interesting right guard in the NFL, as much as I would love that, Zach. We broke it down like this. The all-narrative team with quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and O-line on offense. Yeah. D-line, linebacker, secondary on defense, and then we will also throw in head coach as well to that. So, Brandon, let's start with the head of the snake on this. Looking for the narrative quarterback situation going into the year. I'm going to throw out a few here as we try and decide this one, because this is certainly going to be the most stacked position, right? You've got, going all the way back in this offseason, Kyler Murray could very much be someone in this conversation. $230.5 million contract extension that comes with the homework clause that exists and then gets removed once Twitter bashes the Cardinals and everyone involved for how that went. Kyler Murray, Steve Keim, their GM, and Cliff Kingsbury, their head coach, all re-signed together, so they're going to be there, but it seemed uncomfortable for certain times along the way. You pointed that out during this preseason with the whole play calling in the fourth quarter thing that went on with Kyler and Cliff.
Yeah, I would say when it comes to the all-narrative team, that one gets pushed further towards the back burner because of the extensions.
Yeah, which is a good point. A good point. Everyone there is pretty solid, but still juicy, and we know when Call of Duty comes out, we're going to redo this whole thing in the lineup. Staying in that division, the 49ers, their quarterback room. Jimmy Garoppolo comes back as the backup quarterback. It's supposed to be Trey Lance's team, and now you've got this awkward bit of, backseat driving that could be going on if this is not handled the right way. We talked about this in real time. This could be nothing. The 49ers could know their personnel well, but leave Jimmy Garoppolo, who seems uniquely suited for this disposition-wise, could be a great compliment to Trey Lance as he gets going and gets his snaps under him. The team could be ready to take those lumps with Trey Lance, but there's still some potential weirds there. I would also throw in maybe the NFC East just almost as a whole. Dak Prescott is going to go into every year pretty scrutinized. Jalen Hurts seems like he is constantly on trial for his job in Philadelphia. Daniel Jones is in his prove-it year, and the Giants could be his last year as Daboll and that staff take over. And then you got Carson Wentz as the quarterback of the Washington football team, who seems like he is on trial for his football life, at least as a starter.
Man, with Sam Howell backing him up?
Yes, their rookie, I think, like 5th round pick out of North Carolina. It was something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's very, very interesting, especially obviously with Jalen Hurts. But Daniel Jones, like you said, playing for his life, that the NFC East is so important and not important between the lines that the entire division has to be up there for the narrative race for a quarterback.
It really, you lump them all together, and I think it makes a pretty compelling choice. But Brandon, I think we're going to see a clear medal stand that forms with the top 3.
Okay.
Baker Mayfield and the quarterback situation for the Carolina Panthers.
Yes.
So I look at that and I see a situation where we don't know if Baker Mayfield can rebound into form, if Matt Rule is going to be able to stick around there long enough to see that through, if there's any sort of injury or poor play that leads us back to a Sam Darnold world who's still on the team. A lot of variables in that one. You've got Tua in Miami. Going all the way back to last year for a team that was linked to Deshaun Watson around the trade deadline in a way that Tua had to address publicly. Then all the changes with his coach, they have mortgaged so much money and capital into getting him weapons and things to try and make it work. He has sparked an entire online dark web channel of QAnon folks, so it couldn't possibly be weirder than the Miami Dolphins quarterback room. They definitely lead the league in weird.
Yes. I think I want to lean that way, especially since they opened up the season against Bill Belichick and the Patriots. There's just something about that narrative that I'm very attracted to. Obviously, Mac Jones on the other end of that, but there are a bunch of other quarterbacks out there. Aaron Rodgers was ayahuasca, 2 years removed from this stuff now. Someone who we joined by with Lamar Jackson. It really goes. I think you skimmed over it a little bit. We're not going to talk about Deshaun Watson, but we know there's a huge narrative there. But Patrick Mahomes trying to prove himself as Patrick Mahomes after Cheetah left, and obviously I think that the Cheetah makes the Tua story even much more interesting. But there's plenty of AFC quarterback narratives out there.
There are, but I think those are mostly good ones. And for all the stuff about Mahomes and the weird conversations from Sammy Watkins and Tyreek Hill this offseason, throwing subtle shade at him by complimenting their quarterbacks at his expense, he's still largely considered one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He plays in the toughest division. All of that stuff, I think, is still going to make like the AFC West quarterback conversation more about the positives than any sort of slights. So, Brandon, that's why I want to head over to the NFC for my last submission here, and then we'll pick a quarterback and move on to running backs. Tom Brady. Guy retired for 40 days this offseason, missed 11 days of training camp. You've got all these tabloid stories about how Giselle is frustrated with Tom's decision to come back, and he had to go on a make-good vacation that they had planned. All of that stuff, coupled with the fact that he's Tom bleeping Brady, does make that one a pretty compelling case for the top spot. So, Brandon, looking at all those, what jumps out to you that should be the quarterback for our all-narrative team, or the quarterback room for our all-narrative team?
Ooh, quarterback room? You taking backups too?
Well, that just for like the Jimmy G portion of things. I made the caveat for the 49ers room.
Listen, I really, really like Tom Brady taking it because he's a guy who has won a Super Bowl recently, retired in a very strange way. So the narrative started almost like immediately after the season ended. Like this narrative is a carryover. Obviously, all of these narratives are, but this one specifically, as someone who left and then came back, and it's Tom Brady, like in a down NFC East team or NFC division. It's almost like LeBron James in the East. Like it's always going to take up the majority of the thoughts and care and concern.
You know what? I was going to try and make a strong argument for Tua because I had also forgotten there was that whole thing this offseason surrounding Tom Brady and Sean Payton potentially coming down to Miami as a package. Wow. That was a whole thing. But I guess that just further serves to go back to Tom Brady. So I think I'm with you for the all-narrative team. I would probably go Tom Brady with Tua as a very close second on this list. Just for everything, Tom Brady checked almost every box. I mean, the guy literally retired, was linked to all of those things with Miami, so that one seems like a pretty easy choice on any given year. We'll start off with Tom Brady.
And I think our practice squad player for quarterbacks will be Baker Mayfield. The way he had to leave Cleveland, who they replaced him with, where he landed, and somehow it feels very like that team could have drafted him in the first place. Like there's something about it that I'm never going to take my eyes off all season long.
And we get immediate gratification because we've got the rematch, the revenge game with the Browns week 1. All that drama that I think was a little bit overblown about Baker Mayfield, co-signing someone saying that he was going to go out there and, do well against the Browns essentially. So I like that. We got starter, backup, and practice squad on this one. So Tom Brady starting, 2 is the backup of Baker Mayfield, rounding it out on P squad. All right, let's go to running backs. I think this one is a little bit tighter of a conversation just by nature of the position in the modern NFL. Like, you've got a bunch of teams that have very good running backs. Jonathan Taylor is going to be great. Derrick Henry coming back after injury. You can look at the Baltimore running back room that'll be healthy after last year, which could potentially be a part of this as well. A team like the Las Vegas Raiders, who didn't pick up the 5th-year option on Brandon Jacobs and drafted Josh Jacobs. Yes. Brandon Jacobs, old Giants, big running back.
Love him. Thunder and lightning.
Brandon, I want to pose 2 inside the NFC East that I think are at the top of this, though.
Okay.
Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley, who went on the Second Win podcast that's hosted by 2 of his friends and said, quote, "People are trying to write me off. You know what? Fuck everybody. I'm ready to go crazy, and I'm going to let the world feel me." Barkley is 25 years old. He wasn't fully healthy last year, coming off of an ACL. He injured his ankle in Week 5 against the Cowboys. He only had 593 yards last year in 13 games. And he was a guy that had a 2nd overall pick attached to his name and is an otherworldly talent and was a superstar as soon as he came into the league. And we last saw him freaking out at Serena Williams' tennis match at Flushing Meadows. He's got all the name power of a star player, but we haven't seen that production in a long time. And for the Giants, they have a decision to make based on this season with how this running back fits into the future plans with the new regime. And then the other one for running back in my mind is right in the division with the Cowboys. Ezekiel Elliott, contract-wise, has a deal that the Cowboys could potentially get out of next year if production keeps going down. He had a career low in scrimmage yards last year. It was 37 more than 2017, but that year he was suspended and only played 10 games. So you couple that with Tony Pollard's emergence in that backfield and the fact that it's the Cowboys. But, Brandon, for me, I'd be pretty content to make this one Saquon Barkley. I think he's the biggest name with the least production around it for a team in that market who definitely could be in his last year at that team if things don't go well.
Yeah, it seems like, I don't know, Mike, Ezekiel Elliott could be his last year too. Because Jerry Jones is one of the only people.
It could be his last year.
One of the only people that are kind of doing the whole we go as far as Zeke takes us thing. And I was like, okay, we know you're lying because no team, unless you're talking about the Tennessee Titans, no offense is dependent solely on how far the running back takes them. And this could be Zeke's last year there with the Cowboys.
It's interesting to me because for Zeke it's money, and for Saquon it's going to be the prospect of having to pay him money to keep him around. And I wonder if you made all things equal on the other side of this, which running back? I guess it'd be Saquon because of age, more than likely.
What do you
like just where Zeke's at right now? Saquon's only 25 years old, so I'm saying if you were going to be able to a team that went after one of them. Even though Ezekiel Elliott has had a ton more NFL success than Saquon Barkley and has been a much more consistent presence, if you were going to take a gamble on one, even though Saquon Barkley was coming off those injuries in the last couple of years, he is only 25 years old. But I would probably make Saquon the narrative choice. Are we in agreement on that one?
Yes. For podcast sake, yes.
All right, Saquon Barkley, our narrative running back for the year. Let's move on to wide receiver. For the wide receiver groups, and again, we're going to do this one as mostly groups. We had some volatility this offseason, right? You had Tyreek Hill go over to the Miami Dolphins room and start a podcast and everything that came with that, and I'm sure that'll keep going during the season. And you have the prospect of what happens should things not go well with Tua Tagovailoa after he's talked all that talk about him relative to Mahomes. On the shoe on the other foot, Kansas City.
Yeah.
Lost Tyreek Hill. You bring in Juju Smith-Schuster, Marquez Valdes-Scantling. You kind of recreate a very different room. You know, you've got Sky Moore as one of your draft picks. You didn't go out here and try and pound for pound, try and replace Tyreek Hill. You've instead gone a little bit of the Ewing theory, where, all right, you take that one guy out and we'll just spread the love. On top of that, the other ones that I would throw in here would be Baltimore, just because Hollywood Brown's gone. You're waiting to see what happens with some of this young receiver room. And then Green Bay and Arizona. Green Bay lost Devontae Adams. Lazard's supposed to be the number one now. You had Romeo Doubs and Christian Watkins, their top draft pick, kind of get called out by Aaron Rodgers during camp, saying he needs more out of those guys, needs more attention to detail. And then Arizona on the other side gets Hollywood Brown, but loses their best receiver in DeAndre Hopkins for 6 games due to a performance-enhancing drug positive test. So is there one that stands out more than the others to you, Brandon? Because this one might be the toughest one to call for me right now.
Yeah, right now, the one I like the most, I don't want to put up there because we get to see him least or last, DeAndre Hopkins. And all the things that he's done great for specifically the Cardinals. Kyler Murray has really leaned on him. And then we don't have him for these first 6 games, Mike. So that's tough to put him there. But narratively, I do want to. I have my eyes on him. And then really that receiving core over there with the Vikings, because they're leaning on Kirk Cousins and because everyone's obsessed with making sure Kirk Cousins is a starter in this league. His wide receivers have the biggest spotlight on him. He's got a lot of ways to spread the ball around. But if we're picking just one guy, Mike, it's tough.
One wide receiver room. Not one guy. One wide receiver room. So one group of wide receivers. I'd be inclined to pick Green Bay.
Okay.
I think going into a world post the best wide receiver in football from the last number of seasons, in a way that affects the star quarterback that you've got, the way that offense might shift around, the fact that we had that conversation, the back and forth jabs about Derek Carr, the future, going from one Hall of Famer to another, and then all that stuff. I feel like for me, that one would probably be it, just because that's also going to be a team we focus on a ton. So if we're talking about narrative-wise, living and dying with performance every week, if we get a few weeks into the season and all of a sudden this Green Bay Packers offense is stalled out, Aaron Rodgers can't get protected, and he's lost his safety blanket, I feel like that's going to be a pretty big story as the year goes on.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I do think the reason why they're interesting is losing Devontae Adams is the same reason why the Vegas and the Raiders are interesting with Hunter Renfro's new contract, Darren Waller, which is tight end, wide receiver, whatever he actually is.
Yeah, you can throw him in there.
I just think that team surrounded around Derek Carr being the MFer with Tom Brady, I think those wide receivers need to prove a little bit for Derek Carr as well.
That is true. God, I forgot that is yet another reason why Tom Brady was our narrative pick, because we had that MFer conversation that went on here. God, just continuing to solidify our starter there. All right, so far we have Tom Brady as our starting narrative quarterback, Saquon Barkley as our running back, and the Green Bay Packers wide receiver room as our narrative wide receiver room. All right, let's get to the Hogs here. The offensive lines, this one seems to have a pretty obvious candidate, Brandon, just because I think, and some of this might be recency bias, so correct me if I'm wrong, but the Dallas Cowboys are going to be a hard one to avoid on this front here. You lose Tyron Smith to that hamstring injury till December. They just signed Jason Peters, the longtime veteran, most known for his time with the Philadelphia Eagles, to the practice squad. Going to give him some time to come online and see if they need him. Tyler Smith, their rookie first-round pick out of Tulsa, was supposed to start at guard, now might have to start at tackle in a way that maybe he's not ready for yet. And all of that in front of a quarterback who's finally healthy and a running back that we just talked about that are in pretty big years. So that one seems to be the leader in the clubhouse for me, Brandon. You could also throw Green Bay in there. They've got their two best offensive linemen still dealing with injury. Bakhtiari's supposed to be back. The Rams lose Andrew Whitworth, who was a huge part of their Super Bowl run. They've had some injuries up front as well. Among the replacements, Logan Bruss, who was one of their draft picks, who was maybe in the mix at guard, injured during the preseason. And then the Cincinnati Bengals, went out and signed or drafted 4 new starters in front of Joe Burrow. Jonah Williams, the only holdover from the previous regime here, but Joe Burrow was sacked, counting the playoffs, 70 times last season, and they still made the bleeping Super Bowl.
Mike, that's my number one. With all those signings that they had, and Joe Mixon finally getting a chance to run behind an offensive line, and Joe Burrow getting a chance to get some protection to throw to Jamar Chase, the other world wide receiver, and that entire core. Obviously, they lost their tight end to the Jets, but that's my number one pick narrative-wise, Mike, is this team that tripped and fell and ended up in the Super Bowl just because they were too good not to, won all the games they needed to in the playoffs, that just had this porous offensive line. What can the what can the Cincinnati Bengals do with an offensive line?
Cordell Volson's going to start at left guard, their rookie fourth-round draft pick. Ted Karras, who's been in New England and Miami. Alex Kappa, who came over from Tampa Bay, and Lel Collins, who left that Dallas offensive line, now joined Jonah Williams. This one's tough for me, man, just because narrative-wise, I wonder if we're going to do them dirty the way that we will the Dallas Cowboys if they struggle. Is the Cowboys machine just so big that it's going to be hard to avoid this one? I would side Cowboys on this just for that reason, and because it feels wild to have a narrative team built that doesn't have a piece of the Dallas Cowboys on offense. So that would be my vote here. I think, again, we can do starter and backup on this one because I think you're right that the Bengals offensive line is the most interesting on the field, or one of the most interesting on the field. Can you bring in a totally different group in a position that needs time and continuity and somehow have success based on last year as the basement of what you would expect production-wise?
Bringing up the Cowboys is a perfect way to look at this group. Like Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard, they're going to be, I don't know if you remember back in the day, Bob Diaco. We had key starters and starters. Right, I think it's fair to say the Dallas Cowboys offensive line can be your key starters for our offensive narrative team, and then bringing up the rear as your starters is the Bengals and everything that's going over there in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Zach Martin, man's got to be looking around that offensive line room going, what the hell just happened? Like, I remember I played a high school game at one time. It was the first game of my senior year, and we had playing under the lights at home. We had these brand new black uniforms we were wearing for the game. It was awesome, and it was also super hot at the end of August, beginning of September in Connecticut. And I remember it was the fourth quarter, and we had everyone dealing with cramps that game. And all of a sudden, I'm out there on defense, and I look around, and I see 4 sophomores that are all guys that, like, were good guys and good young dudes that I knew, but they normally didn't see the field. And I looked around, and none of my friends were there, and all of these young kids were there. And I was like, what the hell is going on right now? And I have to imagine Zach Martin, who came into this league next to, future Hall of Famers, and down the way, Doug Free, who was the right tackle next to him coming into the league, was a huge influence on him. And now looks around at what they've been able to pull together, and guys that they still hope are good players, but man, just a far cry from what that group used to be. So the Dallas Cowboys round out our narrative offense for the 2022 season. Brandon, before we get to the narrative defense, it feels like the right time to remind people that the bright lights and the difficult times around being on the narrative team can only be overcome if you keep cool and calm and collected. And you can do that by being like Brandon Newman, for everyone watching on YouTube right now, with your Knockaround sunglasses. Knockaround's polarized sunglasses cost around $30 a pair, so looking good has never been so affordable. There are 15 different frames, a multitude of different colors. There is something for absolutely everybody here. Brandon Newman has a ton of different varieties and options that he gets to wear on each and every day. He's got game day options. He's got shades for Notre Dame games, shades for Los Angeles Lakers games, even shades for Kentucky games if he wants to just root for the home team around where he's from. You can have over 1 billion possible combinations in the Knockaround Custom Shop, and they are perfect if you want to go out for a run. I just took mine for another spin today. I looked the part even while I don't feel the part. Half a battle. Knockaround sunglasses are high-quality polarized sunglasses at a truly affordable price. Check out their huge range of shades at knockaround.com. And when you get to checkout, we already said they're affordable. We'll help you out even more. Use promo code GOJO, that's GOJO, for 20% off at checkout. Again, knockaround.com. Promo code GOJO will get you that 20% off at checkout. Nothing free when it comes to the narrative team on defense, though, Brandon. Ooh. Let's start big and work back for the narrative team on your former position, the defensive line. This one was a little harder for me to find something particularly juicy, just because so much of the moves have been based on maybe expectation would be the narrative portion of this that would come up. Also, I had the weird delineation between D-line and linebacker, because when you think of signings like Khalil Mack and some of those guys that go over, they're technically linebackers, even though they're pass rushers, and so I never know how to kind of negotiate that.
Yeah, Khalil Mack ended up on my linebackers list when I was thinking about narratives and the different things that moved around, because it's – for D-line, it's always, okay, this player did really well last season. Can they do the same thing this next season, right? Like, outside of that, like, there's not a bunch of crazy narratives around, like, can Jeffrey Simons do it again for the Tennessee Titans? You know what I mean? Like, where's the sexy with these D-line plays? I don't know.
Well, and it's that one's less narrative and more just we expect that. Like, there's ones like the Raiders, who now have Chandler Jones in addition to Max Crosby, and is that the best pass rushing tandem in the NFL now? Could be.
Is it the best in the AFC West?
A standard that's a narrative to live up to. Also a question worth asking. If you were to make it specific to just defensive line, for the Chargers, does Sebastian Joseph Day coming over automatically help what was one of the worst run defenses in the NFL last year? We know you got speed to burn on the edges. Are they going to be able to solve the one huge problem that defense for Brandon Staley had all of last season? And then I always find my way back to the Cowboys. Randy Gregory, now in Denver, that group that got so much production from Micah Parsons, where I think he fits into the linebacker room still, despite his use as a pass rusher. But Brandon, my pick for this one would actually be the Kansas City Chiefs.
Really?
just because I think that group let them down in the playoffs last year. Yeah. Chris Jones, we know they did the weird experiment with moving him out to the to D-end last year before they moved him back inside and allow him to eat. Frank Clark has really struggled to, at a bunch of times, live up to that signing, but especially in the postseason for this team. So I just look at that group here. The rookie draft pick, whose name just escaped me right now, the kid from Purdue.
Yeah, I can never pronounce his last name, but
George Karlaftis from Purdue, who was a good, productive rusher and an important part of Purdue's defense. But getting him in the back end of the first round, I'm not necessarily sure he's an immediate impact guy. When I was scouting him, he was a guy that kind of had the ability to get you there, but not necessarily the top-end athleticism to finish plays. And so
he did look good in preseason.
That group, just because he did, but I think part of the narrative part of it is, again, some of this is going to defer to teams on the top end of the spectrum. Like, narrative-wise, you could also throw this, again, depending on how you categorize Von Miller, to a team like the Buffalo Bills, who went and signed him this offseason to try and make sure that their pass rush in the postseason, when they get ready to go and face the Kansas Cities and the Bengals of the world, is up to snuff for that. So it's a narrative, but it's also one that's going to take a while to, I think, get the payoff that we want here. So what are you feeling on this one, Brandon? Former D lineman, I'll give you the first crack at it.
I don't know, Mike. I feel like you're spot on. Definitely with the Chiefs, considering the fact that one of the reasons they lost that Super Bowl, it wasn't the Super Bowl. Was it the AFC Championship game? The lining up off sides.
No, it was it was that one going all the way back to when D Ford was there.
Yes.
Last year they lost the game against the Bills, I believe, in the divisional round. Or no, they beat the Bills in the divisional round. They lost to the Bengals in the AFC Championship.
Yeah, so with Steve Spagnuolo and like all the things he likes to do on defense, I think that's a big part of it too. Obviously the Ravens have a new D coordinator, old boy from Michigan, coming over there trying to be the play caller. But because they run the 3-4 defense, it's hard for me to say there's less defensive linemen out there to have the conversation about. But I still think, and obviously the linebackers, weak side line, hand in the ground linebackers always muddies the waters, Mike. But I like that for the Chiefs because it's the defense is one of those spots with such a bright star on the opposite side. Chiefs fans often grit their teeth and are waiting for the defense to make a play at times and be at least consistent. So I like that, especially with that big splash draft pick. And then you got to look at the Detroit Lions with Aiden Hutchinson. There's a lot of good defensive linemen over there, but I think the Chiefs, just because of what a good D-line could mean for their season, that's why I think it's important to have them at number one.
Yep, Aiden Hutchinson is going to absolutely be watched by a lot of people. The Lions are America's team, like we said, but I just don't think they have the great expectations yet that make the narrative team possible. So we'll go Chiefs for the D-line. Linebacker room, we talked a little bit about what we saw with the signings with the Los Angeles Chargers, bringing Khalil Mack over there. I would also say Bobby Wagner heading to the Los Angeles Rams after spending years as a Seattle Seahawks future Hall of Famer inside that division is a pretty tough look, as he could kind of drink from that fountain of youth there. But Brandon, to me, like, maybe it won't be a big deal, but also with the Chicago Bears, the Roquan Smith-Holden situation that we saw going on all training camp, he was very vocal this offseason about not feeling valued by that new front office. I just don't know if the Bears are going to be good enough for this to be relevant, but it's definitely the juiciest story involving a linebacker in the NFL.
Yeah, obviously health is a situation for Shaquille Leonard, but just because we got a new name over there, Mike, and obviously he's got a new quarterback to the offense that's going to help him once he gets on the field. Shaq Leonard, I'm really interested in seeing what he does with the Colts and how because it's still with the Colts, it's Jonathan Taylor. We're talking about running backs. Like, you have these bright stars that are leading the way, but it still leads to a conversation that's kind of null and void because the Colts can lose to the Jaguars at the end of the season when they have to win the game. So, I like your pick. Bobby Wagner is a solid pick for me, in my opinion, for narrative.
So you want to go Bobby Wags, or do you want to go Roquan Smith?
I think you got to go Bobby Wagner over Roquan Smith. I understand Roquan Smith's very important and will be good for that offense or that defense, but it's the NFC North, Mike, versus Bobby Wagner, who negotiate his own contract. Like anytime he does anything because of the variables of how he does it, and obviously starting with a new team that just won the Super Bowl that is still pretty good. If he's bad, it would look.
Yeah,
you could tell it would be on him. Is that fair to say? Like I think Bobby Wagner is kind of is the tip top of the narrative.
Well,
when it comes to linebackers.
I think. Yeah. I think Bobby Wagner, just because if he does well, it's probably going to really chap a lot of people in Seattle. And that seems like it would get some good run as far as stuff that we could chirp with here. The Roquan Smith is probably going to be for after the season or as we get closer to, when if trades or anything like that could start to happen, if they could get something for him, however that could work out. So,
I like that.
All right, we'll go Bobby Wags, Los Angeles Rams linebacker as our narrative linebacker pick for the year. And then secondary to me, Brandon, this feels like a two-horse race.
Okay.
On one corner, at the end of training camp, and this is the recency bias pick, the Philadelphia Eagles. Because not since the Vince Young comments about we got a dream team has it felt like there's been so much positive momentum. They traded for C.J. Gardner-Johnson from the New Orleans Saints at the end of training camp. They couple him with Darius Slay, James Bradbury, Avonte Maddox, secondary that's absolutely loaded with talent on a team that's now starting to get more and more looks as the potential to win the NFC East and be a serious playoff contender. So you've got them on one side. I just burped. But my pick, Brandon, I feel like it's got to be the Chargers.
Okay, yeah.
You paid Derwin James. You signed J.C. Jackson. That whole defense probably has a claim to a narrative one. A lot of it is also just the Chargers factor, Brandon, where I'd like to see this group on the field long enough for them to go and give them the results football-wise, but we're so used to injury and just weird bad luck completely undoing whatever they try and do. But this Chargers defense, especially with those signings and how they're able to kind of pair them up back there, to me seems like the Chargers are, while not as up in our face as the Eagles have been lately in the news, are just a team that was such a big part of the initial wave of signings this offseason. They've got Asante Samuel Jr. there, Nasir Adderley in the back end. Like, there's just so much now that will be expected of this group that I feel like it's got to be them.
Yeah, I'm okay with that pick. I'm okay with that pick. And there's a bunch of DBs that are out there that can make a difference, but if we're picking one group, I like the Chargers. But it just seems like for some reason, it doesn't seem like that group affects their wins and losses. But I know they're very talented and they make big plays. But how wrong am I on that?
I think it will, just because we focus so much on it. Like, again, the Green Bay Packers secondary could end up being the best in the NFL with guys getting healthy and coming back.
Yes.
The New Orleans Saints secondary losing C.J. Gardner-Johnson and basically saying, we had to make some tough decisions, in large part because they've got so much freaking talent that's residing in there
Marcus Williams
that they couldn't make the decision. Couldn't make the decision to re-sign him. There's other interesting ones. Tampa Bay's secondary took a huge step back last year. A lot of injuries. You had some guys depart there that could be gone. Like, there's other ones that are interesting football-wise. But again, we're not drafting necessarily the football. We're drafting the narrative ones. And I just feel like the Chargers got a bit of a bullseye on their back just because they made some splash signings and because we're all waiting around to see if they can stay on the field long enough and to be healthy and be the Chargers defense that we expect them to be.
I'm with you. I like that. I like that pick.
All right. Now let's round this thing out and get the head coach of our narrative team here. This one, kind of like quarterback, has some interesting potential here. We mentioned Kyle Shanahan, what he's got on his plate with Trey Lance and Jimmy G. Yep. That's a decision and a thing that his organization and his regime, led by him, and John Lynch, their GM, are going to have to answer for. Mike McDaniel is a sneaky one for me, the Dolphins head coach, who is going to have to spend the entire year not only answering questions about Tua Tagovailoa and Tuanon and all that, but also, I think every time something potentially goes wrong, being compared to Brian Flores by a fair amount of people who think that he was done wrong on the way out.
Yep.
and knowing that the Sean Payton, Tom Brady factor was there, it's not as clean-cut a job as we may have thought about it once before. Matt Rule in Charlotte with the Carolina Panthers, to me seems like the candidate for the coach that we might see fired first this season, depending on how things start to go with them. But again, Brandon, it's hard to ignore Mike McCarthy and the damn Cowboys. Like, I know my ESPN is showing, and if the Cowboys are in the news, it leads, but Mike McCarthy is the one that everyone looks at and sees dead man walking, sees Sean Payton and his relationship with Jerry Jones and the future head coach of that franchise and all the affinity there. And with all the injuries starting to mount up around here, you're just wondering if this is going to make it an even harder task for Mike McCarthy to try and go out here and hold off what, for so many people, feels inevitable with Sean Payton.
Okay, but here's my question, and here's my pushback specifically for the Cowboys in this pick. Should we count bridge head coaches as a narrative pick going into the season? Because let's be real, I don't know if anyone thought that Mike McDaniels. No one thought that Mike McCarthy was actually going to be there for a long time. The way they were fawning over Kellen Moore, right? The offensive coordinator.
Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator.
Like it always felt like he was good for now.
Yeah, but I mean, when he got brought in, it was the thought that, well, you have a guy that was a Super Bowl champion, and he apparently, said in the interview that he had spent a lot of time studying analytics, even though it hasn't necessarily seemed like that's been the case here. Brandon, a lot of this is just because I look around and there's so many new coaches or coaches that are early enough into their tenure for me to not feel like I can, because again, narrative-wise, the Chicago Bears are going to be really bad. Right. Matt Eberflus, the new head coach there. Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions could, because of Hard Knocks, be a narrative pick maybe, and maybe I sold them short on how they're done here, but you look at LaFleur, the Vikings have a new coach. That's really going to be more about Kirk Cousins. Arthur Smith in the Atlanta Falcons is basically like Zach Taylor with the Bengals. I'm not 100% sure what he looks like at all times.
Cliff Kingsbury's got
New Orleans, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Cliff Kingsbury would have been the one had he not been given a ton of job security. Pete Carroll won in the battle of who's going to stay, him or Russell Wilson. Brandon Staley, new. Josh McDaniels in Las Vegas could also, and Josh McDaniels could be one there because there's going to be questions all the time about Derek Carr at quarterback, what his future looks like. Josh McDaniels is also the coach that dined and dashed on the Indianapolis Colts before the last regime that showed up there and went back and spent all that time in New England, had the failed stint with the Denver Broncos. Well, however you look at that, he went to a playoff game with Tim Tebow that they won, so... Let him have it. Let him have it if you feel like that. But I don't know, Brandon. I just looked at all those and I didn't see the same bite necessarily. And maybe it's looking at hot seat stuff and putting too much credence into that. So am I wrong? Did I miss one here as far as the narrative coaches here?
You didn't miss one, but I think I worry that too many picks are around this one team and this one narrative. But that Mike McDaniels hire, Mike. Coming from San Francisco, his first time being a head coach, like I said earlier in this podcast, opening up the season against the Patriots. Bill Belichick's a interesting narrative candidate with him not or also doing the play calling. But that comparison to Brian Flores, who's also already going to be a coach in the league, and you can see how he can put his hands on that defense when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I just feel like Mike McDaniel, we're going to constantly, week in, week out, be talking about how well Mike McDaniel is doing with this new look Miami Dolphins team.
Yeah, I mean, him, like Doug Peterson, just because people are into Trevor Lawrence. You know what, Brandon? I think for this one, we can also take some creative liberties because the more we talk it out there, there's a bunch of fairly interesting ones there. But only one coach spent all season becoming beloved by the nation in Hard Knocks. Only one coach had his knees continually baseball batted by close game losses in this last season. Only one coach was recently seen dapping up Eminem on the sidelines during Hard Knocks, telling him what a great representative for the city he was. As I can't imagine Dan Campbell listens to a whole lot of Eminem in his spare time.
No.
But you know what? I shouldn't say that. Dan Campbell contains
True.
multitudes, but Brandon, I'd be pretty comfortable being him as our narrative head coach strictly for the vibes on this one. This is probably just me trying to shoehorn more of the Hard Knocks love into here and make the idea that maybe Detroit will flirt with being more of a bother to the Vikings than we give them credit for in that division. So I might just throw Dan Campbell in here because I care about him.
And also I've been through a couple of these seasons. And I remember how much the head coach takes a back seat once the play gets planned. You know what I mean? Like, the head coach talk is definitely, unless there's an egregious play, it's definitely a Wednesday topic. So I just, you know me. I like the sexiness in Miami. I do think Dan Campbell is the grit, and it'll be the backbone. But if I had a backup, Mike McDaniel's there.
Man, now part of me is second-guessing it because we're not going to spend a bunch of time crushing Dan Campbell this year during the season when things go wrong.
But their team, his coaches, I don't know. I love Dan Campbell, and I would love to continue to watch his shoulders at every press conference that he gives, but I'm more interested in Kyle Shanahan, to be honest with you, and how he handles having his former starting quarterback now being his backup quarterback, making less money, and him still trying to develop this Hercules.
You know what, Brandon?
Huh?
I think you sold me on that one. I think I'm willing to go Kyle Shanahan with you.
All right, here we go.
I think I'm willing to go Kyle Shanahan as the narrative coach here. Has now to show everyone who has been talked about as this gifted play caller for so long, an absolute weapon. Now he's got a rookie quarterback, which we know starts to change the way we grade you, and he's got to do it with his ex in the room watching it all happen. So freaky three-way stuff going on with the 49ers. Thank God they've got Jimmy G there to help negotiate that. I'm sure he's got some experience, but too far? All right.
Man.
That's going to be our narrative team here. I would say if there is a mascot for the narrative team, Brandon, it has got to be Poe from the Baltimore Ravens at this point based on the preseason injury that we saw. And so, since we've got Poe in that spot, we might as well check in with a dear friend of Poe's and try and get an update on the mascot shot heard around the world that we got at the end of preseason. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Baltimore Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson will join us to update us on the status of the injured Ravens mascot. All right, very excited to talk to our next guest here. You guys may know him as the 2019 NFL MVP and the starting quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson, who is also going to be here to talk about the DraftKings Rainmakers initiative and everything we have going on there. But Lamar, how you doing, man? How we feeling?
I'm doing good, Mike. Glad you got it.
Now, we're excited to have you here, man, and I feel like we have to ask the burning question that's on everyone's mind right now when it comes to you and the upcoming NFL season is, how is everyone dealing with the injury to Poe, your guy's mascot from the last preseason game, man? The entire world watched that and was devastated. How are you guys handling this loss going into the season?
Man, we need Poe on the sideline. We're scoring touchdowns and stuff like that. Pumping the crowd up, things like that. I see he was out for the season on an ACL injury. We might need one of those kids because I see they can tackle. We might need one. It's pretty heartbreaking. So he'll bounce back.
Absolutely, minor setback for a major comeback for Poe. We all wish him well on that front. But Lamar, all jokes aside, we know so much of this offseason for you. You've been a very talked about quarterback in a lot of facets. Your contract and everything that's been talked about, and you said there's a week one cutoff here. Your coach, John Harbaugh, came out and said Lamar's focused on the team. He's under contract, and he's going to have the best season he can have. He's hopeful to get a contract. We're hopeful to get him a new contract, and basically just lauded you for your approach to this upcoming season from a football standpoint. So how are you feeling heading into week one of the season now with actual football on the horizon?
I'm feeling pretty wonderful, comfortable. Just can't wait to get out there. I didn't play like 6 games last season. I didn't finish the season with my guys, so I'm pretty pumped up right now. I just can't wait to get out there.
Now, we're 2 former linemen. He's offensive lineman, defensive lineman. We're friends. We played football in college back in the day. I'm originally from Louisville, right? But everything we talk about is thick sixes and getting the big guys in the end zone, right? you put on some weight during the offseason. Maybe every time you cross that field, maybe that's a thick six. You know what I'm saying? Outside of yourself, what teammate on the Ravens would you want to see get into the end zone this season?
Oh man,
thick boy, obviously.
Big boys. Tristan talking. Tristan Costello, he always talking about a touchdown. Ronnie Stanley, he want one. Those two guys, I want to see them score a touchdown. I want to see.
All right. You know, we love that. Ronnie Stanley, former teammate at Notre Dame, so would love to see that for him. But in all seriousness, you did bulk up some this offseason. How much do you feel like that's benefited you so far just going through training camp?
I feel like it benefited me pretty well, because during the season, you're not really able to keep up the same weight, from off season, like, the off season programs, what you've been doing. So I wanted to put a little weight on so I can, last throughout the season and see how I feel.
Well, it's especially for your role in that offense, understandable as you've gone through training camp and you've seen this year's team, because there's been so much talk in the last couple of years of the guys coming and going on your roster. Who stood out to you in training camp this year, especially on the offensive side for you guys?
I have to go with the rookie, Likely. Mark already knew what Mark does. Mark is him. It's self-explanatory. Got to talk about that. But Likely, because he went off. Like, preseason games, even though they're preseason games, but like, you got to give him credit. Like, he was just doing things like you wouldn't just see from guys just stepping into the league. Like, he got to prove a point. Like, yeah, I'm supposed to be here, stuff like that. But it's a lot of guys. I can't just say him too, because Snoop, Snoop was doing this thing like he always do. Then Anthony Brown got in there. Undrafted guy got in and worked his tail off and showed what he can do. He's an NFL quarterback. And those three guys, pretty much. Benjamin Vitt. I can go on and on because our team is pretty good. I can go on and on. But those guys stepped up a lot to me.
For Isaiah, coming in as a rookie, what were your conversations with him like as he started to work his way into the starting lineup more, especially knowing how important the tight end room is for you guys in the offense?
Man, to be honest, I really don't have to say much to him. Like, he learn, he want to learn, he want to get better each and every day. I believe he's studying, because he go out there, it's not like he don't know what he's doing. He's out there and he working his tail off. But if anything, like, he'll ask me, he'll come back after a route he's not ran, he'll ask me, like, how you feel about that? And I'm like, yeah, I want you to do this faster, or, might settle down right here, little things like that, but to critique, but, like, not really anything major. He's a pro right now. He's acting like a pro.
Well, speaking specifically about your wide receivers, I took my 5th year at Ball State, and I played Willie Snead, former wide receiver of yours.
Yeah.
And now you're entering the league, and a lot of these guys are younger than you, and they're looking to you for help. But is there specific character attributes for a receiver that best suits your game that you've been talking to these young guys about?
Man, just, when you're out there, just give it your all. If anything, I'm going to try to put the ball there every time, if I can, but I just need you to catch it and protect it, if anything, because everything won't be perfect. It's not one perfect quarterback I've ever heard of, and neither generation, mine, the previous, the ones before that, just like I said, just do your thing. Play like you played in college, because that's what led you here. So do the same thing. Don't overthink it. Don't try to do too much, or just be you. And, just like I said, just do you, and we can go from there. I got everything else, if anything.
Brandon mentioned some of the youth in that room, new guys on the team, and just for you, you're a veteran in this league now. You've been around for a number of years and had a ton of success. I saw in the press conference to start the season, you said you wanted to try and take more of a role in engaging with your teammates, getting with the wide receivers, having more of those conversations. In your mind, is that a big focus for you going into the season, just upping leadership even more around that team?
Yeah, because I never really, like, I can joke around and stuff like that all day, but like just stepping in and being that vocal leader, that's what I want to do. That's part of the game. I done seen all the greats, step up and do that and be that guy. So that's what I want to do.
Have you talked to anyone this offseason? Is that a conversation you had with Coach Harbaugh or a player or another quarterback that you admire? How did you kind of land on wanting to make that next step?
No, I just want to do that on my own. I talked to some of the receivers and was like, we need to meet, because it's always this one goal we all want to reach at the end of the season, and that's to be, playing in February, be planning a big dance in February, and I told my guys like we need to meet, so we can be on the same accord while we out there on that field. Even in practice, even though we're going against our guys, but we still want to be on that one accord.
Now, obviously, we know going into the draft, when you're a quarterback, your success is tied up to the franchise as much as your own physical abilities and attributes and things like that. I'm a Ravens fan. You can tell by my background. I'm a purple black, Ravens flock. But specifically for you, how important has being a Baltimore Ravens, getting drafted by Baltimore, helped your development as a player, quarterback, person, all the above?
I say, I already came to the league, coming into Baltimore, the same guy I am, even 5 years later, I never changed. I didn't want to be nobody, be another person or bigger than the next person. I always wanted to be myself and just wanted to be grounded and let the community, immune to me, just like, okay, yeah, I can relate to him, and I can be that guy, when I get older, stuff like that, to the younger generation, the younger kids and stuff like that. But it's a great organization, very, very player friendly organization, and I love being here. I tweeted it before, like, this is where I want to be at. So now I'm seeing things like, oh, he wants out because I'm liking stuff. It's just because I see y'all keep engaging in that way, like, oh, you want to leave? So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna play back. Okay, yeah, I like something, So let's be shooting my shots, on social media because they like doing it to me, I guess.
We've been loving it.
You're on there playing the game, man. You guys got a lot of guys on social media that are pretty funny on Twitter on the team. Do you think you're the best follow on the Ravens team, or is there someone you think is better?
We got some funny guys. We got some Patrick Queen, Marlon Humphrey. We have funny guys, but this season this off season I was showing people, I can have a little humor here and there, because they really don't know how I am. So,
You was getting in your Friday bag, deep in your Friday bag. I was rewatching Friday after next Friday after I was watching your IGs. So you got to keep that up.
Oh yeah, for sure. I got to start. That's why I made a TikTok. So now you can catch me on TikTok. I might do something on that.
There we go. Like I say, everyone make sure you check out Lamar's TikTok. Plenty of great stuff coming up and down that pipeline there.
Right.
Lamar, you mentioned before with Mark Andrews, and I do want to ask you more about the upcoming season. We're going to get to the stuff for DraftKings Rainmakers as well. You gave Mark Andrews the African dog chain. What was the story behind that? Why did you gift him that incredible-looking chain?
Who did we play? Tennessee. I want to say Tennessee preseason game. Nick Boyle, our other tight end, he walked up to me like, man, you supposed to let Mark wear the wild dog chain. I'm like, bro, I thought about that. Like, it just hit my brain. Like, I gotta let Mark rock the chain too. So when we played, who we played? Arizona, Tennessee. Who we played? Arizona, Washington. When he had it on.
Tennessee, yeah.
Arizona, Washington.
Yeah.
I don't really remember. But yeah, like one of those games, I'm like, man, I can't forget. I gotta let Mark wear this chain. So when the game came up, let Mark rock the chain. That's just what it was.
So was that your chain that he wore? Was that a gift that you gave him? Wow.
No, it was mine. It was mine.
Okay.
We won the Super Bowl. Probably gonna give him a chain. And Coach Harbaugh already told him that.
So with that in mind,
we breaking news over here.
Yeah, exactly. Chains for all if the Ravens get this Super Bowl win. But you guys have been, getting closer and closer to that goal. You guys finally were able to notch playoff win. You've made it deeper as you've gone along in your career. Yeah. As you've sat around with that group, with Coach Harbaugh and the rest of the core of this team, what have you guys talked about as the way you go from being a playoff team to being a team that can win the Super Bowl? What's that next step for you guys?
Yes, just staying locked in, after you get a victory in the playoff, it's on to the next one. It's not, it's not the Super Bowl until you're there and you win. Actually, just keep your head focused on one thing. The task at hand, just stay focused on that. Don't peak too soon. Don't peak early, and don't worry about the outside noise. Just focus on each other and focus on getting better. So, game one, wild card, however it may come, you focus on that game, that specific game, and then it's on to the next one. You're not. Okay, say you playing Tennessee wild card game. You're not worried about the Bills, the Chiefs, or anything like that. You focus on, the Tennessee Titans right now. You win that game, then you can focus on your next opponent. That's just what it is. We just focus on the task in hand and just go on from there.
And with that in mind, so many people also look at your guys' style of play. They've talked a lot, and you as a quarterback discussed a lot this offseason. Have you guys worked extra on adding even more in the passing game? Are you guys comfortable with the way that you go about this? How have you kind of taken in a lot of what's felt like weird and undue criticism at times for your game as a quarterback and this offense as a passing attack?
Yeah, we've added a small portion of things to our offense, but I'm comfortable with whatever offense, because in college, I had to throw the ball a lot. I had Bobby Petrino as my coach. I couldn't just run the ball just when I did run, I just made it look good, stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with anything, really.
Well, how's J.K. Dobbins going to help this offense? Obviously, we were all looking for him last year. How's it going to change this offense looking into this next season?
She's going to bring a lot to our offense. That's one of our main backs besides Gus, because him and Gus went out on us at the same time, really. Like, it was unfortunate we couldn't have none of those guys, any of those guys early. Like, it was crazy. But J.K. is a huge piece to our offense, But we have guys who coming in, until he get back, till he's all the way 100%, and I just can't wait to see him out there.
What was that like for you last season as you, for the first half of the year, playing at this incredible pace? A lot of people saying you were the MVP halfway through last season with how you were performing. As you looked around and saw all the injuries on your team, how did that change your mindset at all? Or how did that change the way that you approach games, knowing so many of the guys you relied on weren't out there because of injury?
Just do me, and the guys who was with me, we're gonna make it happen. That's all it was last season, just make it happen. And that's what we try to do. Try to do that each and every game.
Lamar, your coach, John Harbaugh, we see all these shots of you guys on the sideline before fourth downs, before these pivotal moments. We've heard the mic'd up where he's asking you if you want to go for it and giving you guys that. What's it mean to have a coach with that kind of belief in you guys and to have that kind of relationship that you do with John?
It means a lot, it boosts our confidence while we're out there, we're not thinking about like, oh, we're going 3 down, like we just got 3 downs right here, we probably got a 4th, we just got to get close, close to making this first down, and then we got a shot right here, our coach liable to say go for, 4th and 3, 4th and 4, stuff like that.
No, it makes you guys one of the most fun offenses to watch in all of football. So we're very excited for a lot of that, Lamar. We also know people are excited about your role and really a lot of NFL players' role with a new promotion that DraftKings has coming up in the DraftKings Rainmakers football franchise. These are digital collectible NFTs throughout the season that are going to allow people to enter into even bigger and better contests, on DraftKings as sort of this next wave of fantasy football. So I know you got to be in one of the commercials for this a while back. What does it mean for you to have this partnership with DraftKings Rainmakers?
It means a lot. It was incredible shooting the video too out there in LA. It was very incredible, to see it come to life and have Kevin Hart speaking to us. Like it was crazy. They was hyping it up the whole time, but it was like my first commercial. I'd never been in a real commercial besides the Heisman commercial, but like something like so like I don't even know how to explain it. Like it was just like crazy, man. But it was very fun. And I'm glad I'm a part of DraftKings, the new digital NFT. Happy about it.
And for this, it's they're like digital trading cards. They get them. The NFL players they can star on their team. So if someone opens up their Rainmakers NFT pack and they get a Lamar Jackson NFT and can play you on the team, what kind of player are they getting this upcoming season?
I don't want to say it's self-explanatory, but it's up this season. So we're gonna get a lot. We're gonna get a lot going, a lot cracking this season. We're gonna get a lot cracking this season, no doubt.
There we go. You heard it first. Lamar Jackson is the one you want to look for when you're opening up the pack on this one. Is going down this season. Lamar, we're excited for you, man. We're glad football season's finally here. I'm sure you're chomping at the bit, but thanks so much for giving us all this time, man, and best of luck with everything. We'll say a few extra prayers for Poe as well on the way out.
Appreciate you, man.
Amen.
No doubt.
Appreciate you, Lamar. Thank you.
Big thanks to Lamar Jackson. Hope he keeps on tweeting through it. Very entertaining. But Brandon, I don't know if it's quite as entertaining as when I get to do every day is sit here and ask, do you know what time it is?
Meet me at the altar with your white dress. We ain't getting no younger, so we might as well do it. Yeah, feeling you all the while, girl, I must confess. This, that, and the third. This, that, and the third.
I know you have to say this, that, the third, but I really was just looking for let's get married.
Baby, let's get married.
Meet me at the altar and God, that shit's just so damn catchy, man. R&B from that era was built different.
It really was, Mike. It really was. It was so good. It was so good that there's two versions of that. There's the song, the original one that you play, like, I don't know, some point in time during the wedding, like maybe when people are around. I don't know. Some weddings you hear it, and then reception you hear the remix, right? Featuring Rev Run. What's going on all across the sea? It ain't nothing I ain't frying, shorty coming with me. Yeah, so it's a classic.
Oh, and an absolute classic. And if you loved it because it was a classic, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and tell Brandon how much you loved the original, the remix, and all the above. Brandon, let's start with this. Because we have great news for this, that, and the third. Wake Forest quarterback Sam Hartman had been out indefinitely with an undisclosed injury, illness. We hadn't been made aware of the situation publicly. We got great news yesterday, courtesy of David Hale at ESPN, who does a great job covering the ACC, and a number of other reporters that I saw, but David was the first one that I saw. Sam Hartman has now been cleared to return to action, the school announced on Tuesday. He was sidelined last month. The school called it a non-football injury, but Tuesday they acknowledged he had been diagnosed with, I believe it's Paget-Schroeder syndrome, also known as effort thrombosis, which is a blood clot often associated with repeated strenuous activity. He had surgery on August 9 to have the clot removed, and a follow-up ultrasound on Friday confirmed that he had no signs of additional clotting. Hartman said, quote, "This process made me appreciate all the people at Wake Forest University and around our football program for how they care for us. There'll be a time for me to tell my complete story, but right now I'm really just excited to get back out on the field with my teammates." They play Vanderbilt on Saturday. Obviously, there's a bunch of football stuff for Wake Forest that's going to be relevant to this as we talk about Clemson that looked a little bit less than themselves offensively this weekend, and some of the other teams around here for a Wake Forest crew that was dynamic on offense last year, and Sam Hartman's a really huge part of that. But Brandon, blood clot's one of those things, just scares the shit out of you every time you hear it. You know these situations can end so much worse, and for young athletes, we see this a lot happen, especially when guys make the jump from college to pro. But because your body's under such ridiculous and different stressors, thank God that you go through so much medical screening at the beginning of every season, and these things often get found. And we see a lot of cases where guys have this found before it's too late, and it can do something to help in the way that they were able to with Sam Hartman here. So glad to see that. Glad he's going to get back out there and be able to do what he loves, and certainly really, really happy for everyone around Wake Forest that they get their guy back.
Absolutely. And also the team at this point in time in the season, ranked in the top 25, at number 23, and they have the opportunity to continue to build on that. But yes, we're glad to see him back. I'm always very I have a lot of pause for people that are out indefinitely and then are coming back very soon. And obviously this is very different with a blood clot, so you don't expect that, any more complications to happen. But it is one of those situations where I hope everything is okay, and that this is his decision and not necessarily the school thinking like, hey, we have an opportunity to be at the top of the ACC, get your ass out there and throw these touchdowns.
I think just based on the way this was always presented, we don't have to worry about much of that. This seems to be everyone understanding and protecting his privacy throughout this process. And so I would say kudos to Wake Forest. We can, like I said, we'll eventually hear more from Sam on this, but he seemed pretty complimentary of the way that Wake Forest had dealt with this. I know sometimes I sort of balk at how secretive colleges are when it comes to injury. It often seems like it's something more motivated in coaching paranoia than actual care for the athlete involved. But with something like this that's a true health scare, them keeping this under wraps is absolutely doing right by the athlete, and I'm glad that he comes out on the other side of this feeling a lot better. So congratulations to Sam Hartman. Very happy for him and the crew at Wake Forest. Brandon, let's get to that, though. That has to do with your Los Angeles Lakers. Pat Beverly got signed by the Lakers this offseason after going on and manifesting this on like the First Take Desk and everywhere else when he did the car wash at ESPN, saying if the Lakers sign me, they're going to the playoffs. And Patrick Beverly now got put in front of a microphone in a Lakers uniform. And first off, Brandon, did you see on the way out of media availability the walk-by with Russell Westbrook? Both of them in the media room in front of a lot of cameras. What I looked at, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, as very cold and obligatory dap.
Cold and obligatory dap, Mike? We talking about the same dap? Are we analyzing the same dap here, Mike? Because let me tell you what I saw. And maybe I'm not coming from a biased position, but I saw a slew of things leading up to this, right? The pictures of them at practice, kind of talking to each other. During their interview, right before the dap happened, I believe a towel was thrown to Pat Beverly. He caught it and said, Westbrook's first dime of the year, right? So, like, it seems like they are working through the old history. It's like when there's a big issue between two people, it's not going to get fixed in a day, Mike, but it's going to get fixed with people addressing the elephants in the room and then trying to tame the elephant. I think this is what's going on. The dap that you saw was taming of the elephant, considering the fact that, like, Russell Westbrook and Pat Beverly play very different styles of basketball to the point where, you know, Pat Bev might push somebody in the back and you know, have Chris Paul's head snap back and get fouled and get thrown out of the game in a very dramatic way, where Russell Westbrook will just, you know, shoot 3-pointers until he gets benched. I feel like they can learn from each other, and I understand what you're saying. There's animosity there, but I think it's the animosity that they're getting over slowly but surely.
I'm just saying, purely looking at it from the DAP standpoint, they got a long way to go.
Mike.
Because they gave that brand, it was the quick pop into like a light hug, and then they just kept it moving. And Brandon, you know this. When it comes to DAP, if this is a person you're really messing with, some part of the process is getting exaggerated. Whether that's the hug on the back end, whether it's the pitter-patter approach on the front end, whether it's the ferocity that you hit it with there. And I understand Cali dudes do it different. I know there's a little bit of difference in the DAP out this way, but I just feel like knowing as much DAP as we've been around, that does not qualify as someone who looked overly interested in fraternizing with the person they were dapping it up with.
Mike, he's waiting his turn to get interviewed himself. Russell Westbrook is very aware that this team might deal him, so he's kind of. I think that what you're feeling is that push or apprehension, like. Pat Bev's presence means that Russell Westbrook may be on the way out. I think that's the little animosity you're hearing. But you're not talking about the hug that happened, Mike. It was the quick handshake. Had a lot of audio behind it, and then they leaned in. Now, obviously, Pat Bev used both hands to get around. Russell Westbrook, this may be the part, only used one hand to give him that love tap on the back. It was a quick bat on his back, Mike, but I think that's mutual respect there. Keep in mind, too, Patrick Beverly is a very small person in comparison to Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook is a very large man. He was leaning. He was trying to not make Pat feel so small. Like I feel like that was handled perfectly. And also, they know the cameras are there, Mike. These are two people that try to master the cameras. They know the cameras are there.
That's my point, is this was just for the cameras. And that if the cameras weren't there, they'd have probably gone on past and kept it moving. So that being said, Brandon, it all leads to the statement that we heard from Pat Bev, which is what this is supposed to be about, which is Pat Bev was asked by a reporter in the junket. He said, "So you'll be playing with LeBron James and Anthony Davis." Pat Bev stops him and says, "They're going to be playing with me. I've made the playoffs last year. They didn't. It's a difference." Now, he also said a bunch of complimentary stuff about those guys and how much he was looking forward to it, but it was just peak Patrick Beverly.
Oh, peak Lakers media trying to make Patrick Beverley grovel on the way in. Listen, this guy just played for the Clippers. The best quote that I heard from that press conference is Patrick Beverley on going to play from the Clippers to the Lakers. It's very different, night and day. Walking around the city, you almost get a different amount of respect. Obviously, we know Clippers players are ballers and they're good at hip hop. We can talk to Sloan Martin about her love for the Clippers back in the day. But the Lakers are a big brand. The Lakers are very important. The Lakers hold X amount of weight. And I think Pat Bev is taking a very intentional leadership role with this team and letting even LeBron James and Anthony Davis know, y'all can chill. I got this. I'll let y'all know where y'all need to be and where y'all need to be here. And if that leads to some animosity, Mike, and a trade in February where we move a Patrick Beverley that's doing well for a piece that we actually need to make it further in the playoffs, I'm all for it. Pat Bev, do your thing, boy. Do your thing, boy. Do your thing.
Man, the Lakers narcotic does something to y'all's brains if this is the spin zone you're trying to work at. Man, I just hope Anthony Davis stays healthy and is good so I don't have to deal with this all season long here. Congratulations, Lakers fans. If nothing else, man, speaking of the narrative teams, you got that one on lock. But, Brandon, let's finish it off and get to the third and head to Chicago because the Bears released concept plans for their development of a 326-acre property in Arlington Park, which includes the construction of a domed stadium. So we remember there was all this hoopla last September when the Bears signed a $197 million purchase and sale agreement with Churchill Downs, Inc. for that property in Arlington Heights. There was all that stuff where the mayor of Chicago was trying to present plans that were renovations for Soldier Field. But, Brandon, it seems as though the Bears are moving forward solely with the focus on developing that Arlington Heights property, trying to turn this into a place where they want it to be an opportunity for them to potentially host the Super Bowl, the college football playoff, a Final Four. They want to turn this into not only a dome, but they want to make it an event space like we've seen at Patriot Place, like we've seen pop up at so many of these other new stadiums. And, Brandon, I almost did the thing where I was like, you know how people always love saying, man, snow game football, that's real football. Yeah. And I'm always quick to point out, no, the shit, it isn't football weather. Playing in the snow sucks. Playing in 75-degree weather is football weather. I have a great time playing in that, and you don't have to bastardize an entire game plan 75? That people worked on. People work on a game. Yeah, like maybe 72. Maybe 72.
You got to go lower than that, but I hear what you're saying.
72 with a light breeze. You get a little sweat on your belly in here, and then the breeze hits, and it's like a natural bit of air conditioning.
Mike, we all know the perfect football weather is in October, and 72 ain't nowhere near October, but I'll let you cook.
I'm just saying I would prefer that as weather, and so I always push back on that, and I almost did the thing where I was like, man, you know what? I know this stadium is going to be beautiful. Like SoFi has been beautiful. Like Jerry World's been beautiful. Like the Vikings' new facility. Like the Falcons' new. On and on down the list. We've seen these take over the NFL. Part of me almost did the thing where I said, it's a shame because you're going to lose some of the charm. Soldier Field is this iconic image right near the lake in downtown Chicago. And then I remember last year when we were doing these headlines when I was working at ESPN still, and I heard from plenty of people in Chicago who were like, yeah, having to go to Soldier Field kind of sucks, and there's no easy place to park, and it's hard to do all the things you want to do around game day that necessarily make that something worth sticking around with. And so local politics I always stay out of with these things, but the locals tend to know best what they want, and this just seems to be the way this is all going, where we're going to get a bunch of NFL stadiums that are beautiful, that are complexes built to honor the god that is football, but they're all basically just variants of AT&T that Jerry built. Like, that's the reality. When I went out to Allegiant to be part of the uniform release video where the Raiders play, it's just Jerry World with a different video board in one end zone. And instead of having like a whole bay of Ford trucks on one level, they've got the big, the big torch that they've got up there. But it's essentially the same thing. So they're all going to end up looking the same. I still don't think cold weather cities should be able to host the Super Bowl. We did that in Minneapolis. Was not a great time. Give them the draft. Give them something else here. I guess with a dome, it would still be viable game-wise. But even in the lead-up, you've got the whole lead-up that's supposed to be a celebration of the game where people have to bring goose-down jackets.
True. Yeah. I mean, you don't want that. You don't want to have that. Yeah, I'm with you, Mike, but my thing is I don't know if this new stadium that the Bears are trying to build is going to mimic the Jerry World Suns that are out there. I think they're trying to do more Midwestern stuff, and they're just trying to chase after Lucas Oil, because Lucas Oil, what the Colts have done, hosting the Combine year in, year out, getting the college football playoffs. Like, how many college football conferences do you know of that were just randomly in Indy? Like, I think they're mainly trying to chase what Lucas Oil has done over what Jerry World has accomplished.
That's true. How has Indy managed to just snake it till they make it this entire time? They've got those systems of indoor walkways
they got places to park,
that everyone always talks about there. Parking goes a long way, man. When in doubt, parking in a steakhouse that everyone can readily point to is the place that you need to go. St. Elmo's going to keep slinging. Brandon, I will never forget being at the college football playoff this last year at Indianapolis, and at halftime in the press area at Lucas Oil, they had the biggest, nastiest looking drums of St. Elmo shrimp cocktail sitting in the press room. Just big bowls of shrimp sitting in the press
picked
box. Over? I mean, listen, when the bear's hungry, it'll eat. And you have never seen a group of people willing to just converge in on something like hyenas quite like media at a sporting event. So they got eaten, but it wasn't a pretty scene here. So that'll be the likely future for fans in Chicago, as the domed stadium is going to end up working there. I did enjoy last year as the Green Bay Packers were having some bit of issues. Someone said that they should blow up Lambeau Field and dome it. So there was all hell breaking loose for that team too. Chicago's actually going to do something about it in the division. Yeah. So that is what Bears fans have to look forward to. We are not going to put a dome on this podcast just yet, but if you think that's a good idea, please let us know. Tweet us at GoJo Show. Download, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating and a review. Go check out Brandon's Hawaiian shirt on the DraftKings YouTube page. Go subscribe to that. Check out the GoJo with Mike Golick Jr. playlist, Brandon.
Thank you for Lamar Jackson for spending his time with us today. I know you guys are expecting me to fan out a little bit more. I did that before and after the interview, so I'm a professional. Thank you very much.
That's a pro, and that's what pros do, as they have Ravens color tiles behind them every day on this podcast here. Thank you guys so much. We'll talk to you tomorrow.